everyone, and welcome to class today. We will be discussing grading, adapting, and modifying for client-centered success, and this is based off of interventions. So these are our objectives today. Students will differentiate between an occupational therapy intervention being graded up or graded down by correctly answering group participation questions in an interactive class activity. And then students will produce one graded up and one graded down activity for each activity related item with 90% accuracy. So to get into it, if it wants to switch, there we go. All right, so what is grading? Grading up is to increase the difficulty of an activity. Grading down is to decrease it, make it easier. So this is very important for our occupational therapy practitioners as it allows for practice, because I mean, in a real life situation, you plan an intervention for a client and then you go to do it and they're really struggling with it. So you're going to want to learn how to grade it down in that case. You want to make it easier for them. So having practice to do this, and then eventually you'll be able to implement and practice easier. And it's just kind of understanding the concept is also very important. And sometimes it's you get a little brain fog. You can't think of a way to grade something down, but even just doing less of, like, if it's a two-step activity, you do one step. Whereas grading up, so the patient goes and they're like flying through this activity like it's nothing. Then you can add more steps, or you can do things like add weight or a bunch of different options that you can do. And so essentially, because it's so broad, like so vast, there's so many different options that you can do, it's best to just practice it. And so that is what we're doing today. So to begin, we're just going to do a little activity where, now this, I had planned this to be in person. However, with it being on Zoom, I would like you to either send in the chat if you're watching live, or you can do it on your own. Just make sure you're doing it. So basically, I will have you give a thumbs up or thumbs down to being graded up. So the first one, an OT wants to address a patient's fine motor abilities by implementing a button board into the intervention. After successfully buttoning all buttons on the board, the OT has the patient complete a button board with smaller buttons. So is the activity graded up, thumbs down, or graded down? Or graded up, thumbs up, graded down, thumbs down. Go ahead and send your answers. And most everyone is doing thumbs up. So that is correct. The OT is grading this intervention up by using smaller buttons than what was originally given. Next, while addressing a patient's ability to wipe themselves after toileting, an OT decides that the patient should start using a long-handled wiper. Is this graded up or graded down? Okay, yep, most of you are putting graded down, and that is graded down. Instead of doing it independently or with assistance, they're using modified assistance or modified independence. They're using assistive equipment, so it is grading down. That also can kind of be confusing depending on the OT's assistance given, but for this case, it was just the client was doing it independently and then struggled. So graded down. That was a bad example. I apologize. So, and then the next question, an OT was providing an intervention to address cutting skills. After allowing the child to cut in his regular cutting position, the OT decided to have the child hold a folder using the armpit of the arm that is cutting. So put it down so that he's not winging. Did the OT grade it up or down? and that is graded up. During sensory intervention, an OT observed that the client was regulated while listening to music and doing her handwriting worksheet. The OT begins to have a conversation with the client. Does the OT grade this activity up or down? So conversing while the child is completing the activity. And that is graded up. Last one, client is having difficulty remembering the verbal directions that the OT gives before completing an ADL activity. The OT decides to implement a visual schedule for the client to follow. The OT grade this up or down? That is graded. I apologize. That's graded down. That is graded down. Yes. Okay. So you all seem to kind of gather that. But like I said earlier, the best way to do it is practicing. So what we're going to do now is go around the classroom and stop sharing my screen, is go around the classroom and look at each of the items around there and think of an intervention for it. And then in doing so, how are you going to grade that intervention with the item? And how are you going to grade it up and grade it down? I will be around to answer any questions.